the Fairfax Industrial District in Kansas City, Kansas, water is everything. It's the beginning of the story, the middle, and now it is the future. The Fairfax District is 2,000 acres of land and 5 miles of levee construction where the Kaw and Missouri rivers meet.
Fairfax is a really interesting area. It's an area that for a long time was just kind of viewed as kind of a marshy farmland. It wasn't really seen as a place to develop or to really think about. And then one day, Guy Stanley went and he was looking at it and he thought about it differently. And he started working with a number of landowners in the area. And ultimately that led to the creation of the Fairfax Industrial District that we know today.
During the good times, the Missouri and Kansas rivers brought prosperity, trading, fun, and a means of transportation. In the bad, the relationship was cursed with an excess of water, mud, and sand. Flooding was a regular occurrence, displacing many homes and businesses and serving as a harbinger of what the 20th century would hold. After floods in 1903, 04, 08, and 1915, the first efforts were launched to regulate and contain the waters of the Kaw River with the formation of the first federal levee.
Once the local landowners here went to Washington and lobbied for Congress to pay attention to Fairfax as being an area that needed to be improved upon, that's what was the motivating factor in the next phase, which was building the levees, getting a federal levee, a levee that was designed for a much greater high water event than what they were used to with those farm levees that are built to a low water event.
In the early 1920s, the railroad started its westward trek across the United States. From Council Bluffs southward, Union Pacific was laying track and looking to expand.
When your history is tied to Abraham Lincoln creating your company, you value history. And our history with Fairfax runs deep, from the creation of it to today and into the future.
Railroad men with a vision looked at Fairfax and saw the future.
Guy Stanley was an interesting man. He actually was an attorney, actually one of the youngest in Kansas at the time, and he went into partnership with his brother Arthur Stanley, and they both represented several of the landowners in Fairfax, and they came together and they were petitioning to essentially get a levee to make the area more valuable, and they ultimately led to getting the Fairfax Drainage District created to build the levees. Now, Guy Stanley was really a visionary of his time. He could see things other people couldn't. He actually went out and explored the land. He went out to Goose Island, which was completely separate, and he could see connecting it to the area and the area becoming a really vital part of the area's economy. It already had a rail line going through with the Missouri Pacific. It had the Missouri River around it, and he saw it as a prime opportunity.
Water remained a concern, so a drainage district was designed, and on September 14, 1922, the Wyandotte County Board of Commissioners approved the Fairfax Drainage District. The objective was flood control and protection for the rail yard and the growing industrial area. The design and construction of the first levee was started even as businesses began moving into Fairfax. From 1922 until the late 1930s into the 40s, the growth of businesses in the district was steady. Rail traffic was strong. The country's burgeoning air industry took hold at the Fairfax Municipal Airport. Loose Wiles Biscuit Company, later to be Sunshine Biscuit, Keebler, and today's Kellogg's, was founded along with Owens Corning. In 1940, with American involvement in World War II seemingly on the horizon, J.H. Kindleberger, the head of North American Aviation, chose Kansas City, Kansas as the site of a new facility. Fairfax was centrally located in the country and had easy access to rail, land, and water transportation. The Fairfax District would become an important epicenter of the war effort, thanks to the B-25 plane production, and a few blocks away, Darby boats, which were crucial to our victory in Normandy. Fairfax's impact on the war effort wasn't limited to production of planes and boats. For the first time in U.S. history, women were making a difference in the workforce. Today, Rosie the Riveter is a cultural icon. But in the 1940s, she was real-life girls and women who took over factories to power the country's war efforts. Rosies were most often young women, many from rural areas of the country. They came to Fairfax, spent a few weeks training, and were sent to the front lines of the manufacturing floor. When World War II ended, so did the need for bomber production, and in the fall of 1945, the plant closed. All told, the men and women of the Fairfax plant produced 6,680 B-25 Mitchell bombers. The conclusion of the war brought both an end and a beginning to Fairfax. Warplanes and boats were no longer in production, but new industries were making the district their home. After the war, General Motors purchased land around what had been the airplane plant, and in 1944, an Oldsmobile was the first GM car off the Fairfax assembly line. Everything about Fairfax was tested and almost lost in 1951, when the floodwaters rose to unimaginable heights and threatened the district's very foundation. In May of 1951, the rain began and didn't stop. By mid-July, the water was winning the battle, creeping ever closer to the Board of Public Utilities. Fears were growing that the BPU would be thrown offline and the whole of Wyandotte County would be in the dark. The community came together in a massive sandbagging operation to save the plant. How did Fairfax flood?
It was caused by the river being high. It caused uplift pressure on the lid or the roof of a large concrete box that handles all the flow from Fairfax and also western part of the district from Kansas City, Kansas, coming down into Fairfax.
The flood of 1951 forever changed the industries that call the district home. Fairfax persevered, rebuilding, retooling, and reinventing itself. In 1953, another levee raise was completed. Soon after, business owners in the district formed the Fairfax Industrial Association. The FIA and its 12-member board serves as the liaison between businesses, government officials, and FIA partners. 100 years in, Fairfax has seen multiple generations of families contribute to its workforce and traditions. For Deborah Dean Wiles-Sprague, Fairfax has always been about family. She grew up watching 3 generations of her family work at Loose Wiles and Sunshine Biscuit, and has fond memories of the company's treatment of its employees and their families, particularly at the holidays.
Sunshine Biscuits would put on the Christmas parties, and all the family was invited to go. And we always went every year. We never missed it. It was a great time, great time. That was always the excitement of the year, is that party and meeting all the people that Dad had always talked about. And a lot of family was down there because they worked there also. Oh, it was fun. I mean, they made it a wonderful time, and they took very good care of the employees and their families.
The Fairfax District's influence extends far past Kansas City, Kansas, to the region and the world. Kansas Cityans may not know it, but when they buy gas, they are buying locally. 95% of the area's supply of unleaded gasoline and diesel, as well as 100% of the jet fuel, is routed through Magellan Pipeline Company and Phillips Pipeline. Together, CertainTeed and Owens Corning make Fairfax the largest production site of fiberglass in the world. Fairfax's Kellogg's plant makes 85% of the world's Cheez-Its. Fairfax is represented by industries as diverse as candle making, printing, furniture systems, security systems, automotive, fiberglass, pallets, healthcare, and more. Today's Fairfax companies are higher tech with good jobs, many of them still attracting minorities and immigrants that make the diversity of Wyandotte County among the highest in the metropolitan area. Improvements to the area are ongoing. Water is still an ever-present and important aspect of the district. A $4 million federal project on the levee will allow for full access to the infrastructure for inspection and maintenance purposes.
We have a history. We have 100 years of history of making great products. And so when we look at the automation, the technology that is now being pulled into what looks like 4 walls, and a roof, and folks don't often understand what's happening behind these nondescript buildings with logos. What's happening is they're making the products that we all use each and every day. That's where it's happening.
We made leaps and bounds over the last few years as a district, Fairfax District. And I think we're going to even go further.
Fairfax companies are committed to their employees, to each other, and to Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County, now and for the next 100 years.